Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the NGO Whisperer Show. My name is Carolyne Opinde. I am the founder of the NGO Whisperer. We are a consulting business that provides technical support to nonprofits so they can successfully impact people's lives. Joining us today from Chicago in the United States of America is Dr. Gordon E. Bradshaw. Dr. Gordon is the co-founder of Community Civility Counts Initiative. Dr. Gordon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on the show today. I appreciate the invitation. It's good to be here.
We are honored to have you today to talk with our audience, share your insights and wisdom on Community Civility Counts Initiative. To start us off, when was Community Civility Counts Initiative established and what is its mission?
Well, Community Civility Counts Initiative began in the city of Gary, Indiana in the year 2015, and it was an initiative of the Gary, Indiana Chamber of Commerce, the Public Policy Committee in particular. I sit as the chairman of the board of the Gary Chamber and as the chairman of the Public Policy Committee. Now, the fact that we have a civility initiative starting in Gary, Indiana is very significant due to the fact that the city of Gary was known for many, many years for its violence. It was known for its low levels of quality of life. It was known for having 10,000 abandoned homes. It was at one time the arson capital of the United States and the murder capital of the United States. I had served many, many years in the city of Gary as an assistant chief of the Gary Fire Department, and also the president of the Gary Chamber, who co-founded this initiative with me, was also a retired chief officer for the fire department. So we had a firsthand look of how badly Gary, Indiana needed some type of a shot in the arm, so to speak, to begin to have positive things happen and to do something to make people aware of how we should be toward one another. And we believed that something positive had to happen. So Chuck Hughes called together my committee, the Public Policy Committee, and said, listen, we need to have an initiative that's positive, that encourages people to do positive things, to bring the level of the quality of life up for the citizens of the city of Gary. And so he said, well, let's do something related to civility. I said, okay, let's do something for the community, but I believe we need to put the slogan together so that it catches people's attention. So they said, well, civility has to count. So we said, how about Community Civility Counts? And from there I said, okay, well, we need to have something very graphic that people can see. So I put together a logo, CCC, Community Civility Counts, and I put together a picture of runners who were holding hands as they were running toward a finish line. But only one person finished first and broke the tape. But the slogan underneath says, together we win. So what we were trying to emphasize is that we can all run, and we may not be at the same pace, but whoever finishes first for all of us. That we all work together, we can all dialogue together, we can all support one another, and ultimately we all benefit if we develop a civil attitude of not trying to make ourselves more important than anyone else, but understanding the value of each person, each organization, and what they bring to the table.
That's beautiful. To think of friends coming together, wanting to make a difference, and building what we now know as Community Civility Counts Initiative. I know that you're not only now in Indiana, you have spread across the globe. And before we get into the details of that, would you please share with us, what services do you offer as you help communities win together?
We began this initiative by understanding we had to touch it from the grassroots perspective. So my team and I, along with the Times Media Group of Northwest Indiana, a very large media group, began to publish information about how we could work together to make civility count. We began to go to schools. We went to charter schools. We went to high schools. We went to grammar schools. We went to hospitals. We went to senior citizens facilities. We went to municipal groups, fire departments, police departments, community organizations, and we even approached corporate America. And we said to them, every one of us can benefit from a less hostile environment. We began to have training seminars during our World Civility Day events, where we would have hundreds of students from local high schools come to our events, and we'd have keynote speakers who were able to really encourage people to develop a civil mindset, to develop the culture of civility. We began to have gatherings that encouraged people to develop the mindset, because we understand that first we've got to develop the mindset. So we began to post our signage. The Times Media Group, very large newspaper group, began to publish a lot of material for us on that. We had essay contests for young people. We had coloring contests for young people, school-age children. And with that, we began the re-education process. And it had to start with a re-education process. People would say, well, what is civility? So we had to start by defining what that is, because it was surprising how many people really didn't understand that word. And so when we went to corporate America with it, and we've gotten some strong supporters, Boeing International, Boys and Girls Clubs of America. We've had initially 5 to 6 municipal governments signed on with us, county governments signed on with us, and we even were able to go as far as the Indiana State Senate and the House of Representatives. We had one of our state senators, Lonnie Randolph, sponsored the event, and we took it to the Senate and the House, where it was passed and received unanimously as a part of governmental culture. And I believe one of the things that's most important here is that civility may have been on the platform in some places, but not in government. Government was really a place that it seemed to be immune to the idea of civility. And we went so far as to recognize those people in government who supported the initiative, and the government itself, the Indiana State House and State Senate, began to award some of their members for adapting the civility culture that we encouraged them to have. So it was more of a re-education process in terms of continued usage of civility language, continued presentation of civility logos and signage. And we had to do that first just to get people familiar with the idea that civility had been reintroduced to them.
As you introduce civility in these communities that you're working with, starting with schools, with children, young children, going into different institutions, as you mentioned, hospitals, corporate America, government, what are some of the important lessons that you carry out of that, even as you replicate it and implement it in different parts of the world? What did you learn from the first place where its birthplace, Indiana, where it came from?
What we learned first and foremost is that many people didn't take us seriously because they had stigmatized Gary, Indiana. They had written Gary off as a place where nothing good can happen. As I forestated, arson capital of the United States, at one time murder capital of the United States. And there was a preconceived notion that this is just another empty bag of air that people are bringing, trying to hype up some type of platform just to get people to notice. But the whole idea was we showed sincerity, and the people who became part of the team showed sincerity. And I think that's what captured people more than anything, was the sincerity in those who became part of the team and part of the platform. So we wanted to convince people this is not about hype, this is about hope, and this is about help. And we can do this. So we ended up having some corporate groups that sponsored us and supported the World Civility Day Initiative. And they took us seriously and they supported, and it started to gain momentum. When Dr. Clyde Rivers came aboard, he brought a myriad of resources with him of people that, by being part of their Golden Rule team, merged into what we were doing with civility very fluidly and very smoothly. And when they saw we had the support of an international base, some that didn't come on board at first began to take us even more seriously then and wanted to be a part of it.
Wonderful. And when is the World Civility Day celebrated?
We always celebrate World Civility Day in the second week of the month of April. Now, regretfully, this past April for World Civility Day 2020, we were not able to gather physically in Gary, Indiana, which is the first time since its inception that we were not able to do that. World Civility Day actually launched in 2016. We started Community Civility Counts in 2015. And each year we would have at least a dozen nations present. And we would have organizations and speakers and leaders from across the United States and Canada be a part of what we were doing. So we had to do it virtually. There were some virtual presentations online this year, and they did a great job in working together to keep the momentum of the initiative and to keep people minded toward it so it wouldn't die out. Now, next year, I believe we're really going to be able to come back, boots on the ground, people gathering in Gary, Indiana, and do something powerful. And because of what we see happening around us right now, civility is becoming more and more relevant every single day of our lives.
As we look into what's happening right now, and as you have rightly put it, civility is becoming more and more relevant, not just in the United States of America, around the world. With COVID-19 pandemic, and then again following the recent killing of George Floyd and the protests that it resulted to around the world. There were people protesting all over the world. I've lived in South Africa, here in the UK, where I am right now. There are protests in Germany, in Paris, all over the world. People saying Black Lives Matters. Now, I will take us right into work that you do as a consultant to support organizations, to support leaders, and to support corporations around the world. And you provide services through mentorship and through trainings. We would like to know, how do you onboard them?
Thank you. First and foremost, I'm fortunate to say that Black Lives Matter was one of the first groups that endorsed us in 2015. This was before there was a lot of turmoil that's obviously in the news now. What we attempted to do, and with the help of the Times Media Group, we were able to establish a platform, first and foremost, that we exist. Once we established that we exist, we began to offer people in their organizations the opportunity to partner with us. It was a no-cost initiative in terms of partnering. We told people, you can use our signage, you can use our initiative title, you can say you're a part of this. We ask you just don't add any radical instrumentation to it that's outside of the scope of what you all know we stand for. Being civil, being organized, and being open to the fact that human lives are valuable. We began to push the idea to companies saying, every company, we know that you understand your own culture of activity and operation. So we're not coming to change the culture of how your company functions, but we're asking companies to develop their own in-house platform based on the civility platform. We were asking companies to establish somebody within their staff that could be like a civility representative within the company that would be able to remind the workers and remind staff members that civility counted. We asked them to put signs up in the lunchroom, in the rec rooms, talk about civility, greet one another civilly, and have some type of training. If it's part of your newsletter, if it's part of your or periodicals that you put out, include a civility article. Have a recognition program for your employees, civility employee of the month. Who's gone above and beyond the call of duty to be kind, to be civil? Maybe you only give them a coffee cup or a mug or a plaque or something, maybe insignificant, but the idea is begin to show the people who are doing this in your organization, let them know that you encourage them, let them know that what they're doing does have impact. So what we began to do was encourage organizations to recognize the people within their organizations that were beginning to do this. The newspaper, the media group, they began to publish articles about civility. They began to recognize people in the community, and they were in joint cooperation with us. And we did this to the degree that we actually received the Northwest Indiana Innovators Award, because they said what we were doing was innovative, because we weren't forcing people into civility and we weren't shaming them into it, but we were putting our best foot forward to really make them aware of the fact that maybe they hadn't been so civil and maybe they hadn't paid attention. So we weren't overbearing with it, but we were mildly aggressive, if I may say, in encouraging people to look at the culture of the workplace. Allow people who have a complaint to begin to air those complaints without retribution, without retaliation. So what we were encouraging organizations to do was give voice to those who were concerned about how they were being treated. When we did that, it began to catch on. We also had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. at the behest of Dr. Rivers, where we addressed representatives from 120 nations about civility and really impressed upon them the need to carry this culture back to their nations and communities. The United States government supported us. U.S. Congressman Peter Visclosky twice made the announcement on the floor of the House that the Gary, Indiana Chamber of Commerce had created this initiative, and they were asking the House and the Senate and all Americans to begin to pay attention to the need to be civil. So while we didn't necessarily have a checklist or a course outline, we made good use of the time and resources we had to try to impress a different narrative, a different ideology, even if it wasn't with courses and books or with any particular, let me say, architecture in terms of here's what you do and here's what you do next. It was just the idea of opening people up first that civility did count. And if they want to change their community, they would have to be civil about it. So we began to talk to different groups about if you have issues that you have, unions, municipal groups, develop civility so that you can sit down at the table and have a mature, open-minded discussion, but do it with civility. We even helped encourage the platform of saying to people, you can talk to me, and when you're becoming uncivil, I'm allowed to interrupt you to say, sir, ma'am, let's bring this discussion back to where we began. Let it be peaceful, let it be civil. So giving people permission to mildly interrupt a discussion when it looks like it's getting out of control. Those were the small measures that we began to use.
It's very powerful as well to think of the word civil, changing nations, without any curriculums, without any methodologies that have been written on paper or volumes of books, just people looking at their culture and looking at the way they conduct themselves and being able to say, this is what we define as being civil in this organization, and this is how we will treat each other. It warms my heart, and I see hope in our communities when I hear excellent examples that you're providing of not only reaching out to communities in Indiana, but also going to the Capitol Hill and speaking to 120 nations who are there. Wow. I can only say wow. Now, taking us deeper into this, you have done a lot of work in the United States of America, and now you're spreading into different continents. I know you have a foothold in Africa, in many other places. How do you support people who are interested in being part of this initiative? First and foremost, to access your mindset, because I believe it starts with a mindset, as you had mentioned previously. How do you help people to develop this mindset, first and foremost, and then carry the baton that you have passed on to them?
Thank you. I believe that, as I'm also a member of the faith community and have been for 47 years, I teach faith-based principles. I have an online video cast called The Demonstration Nation, in which I teach biblical principles of how to actually function. And I coined the phrase glory on ground level, which means we appreciate theory, we appreciate theology, but we also appreciate the ability for people to take it and use it in real time and operate as ambassadors, to use the term that Dr. Rivers has, to actually say each one can reach one. So what we've attempted to do is to give each person the cultural confidence to go address their communities, knowing the specifics of their community, knowing the nuances of their community. And we tell people, listen, we don't live where you live, but here are some ideas that you can take. And one of the first ideas that we want to get across to people in training is to understand what community means. Community is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. So what we try to get people to do is, first and foremost, find the common thread that you have with a person. Even if your religious beliefs are different, even if your cultural beliefs are different, locate first and foremost the common thread. Begin to develop a relationship and a dialogue around that common thread. Now, community also means people who have the understanding of one another's value and what one brings to the other. So what we're saying to people is, when you say you want to represent Community Civility Counts, we as an organization with the Times Media Group began to take the names of people wherever they were from, and we began to publish those in the periodicals. We published those in the newspaper saying, these are supporters, give them your support as well. So when people saw that they had the support of the quote unquote parent group, so to speak, or the initiators of the movement, they understood that we had their backs, so to speak. Even if we could not offer funding or anything of that nature, we were a larger group saying, We are doing this, it's working, and we embrace you. We include you into what we're doing, and we count you worthy of everything we're doing. If we can support you through letters, some places we were actually able to go to in the United States. Outside of the country, Dr. Rivers and his team members were actually able to carry the Golden Rule message, which they already had, and married that to the civility message, and they already had boots on the ground in some places. And so when they have their individual meetings, there is teaching, there is training, and there is dialogue that keeps the civility language alive. So one of the things I always point out is keep the language of something alive, and you'll keep the essence of it alive. When you stop talking about it, you'll stop seeing it materialize and exist in the physical sense.
Wonderful. I love what you've just said. When you keep the language alive, you will keep the essence of it alive. And I want to add, and you will be able to change generations, not just lives, but generations of people. Yes. Now, as we get to the end of this show, I would like you to share with us what you and your team have been doing, not just in Indiana, but around the world, and the different people that have joined in with the various civility initiatives that they have started. How are you supporting communities around the world in times of crisis, such as now with COVID-19 pandemic, and also the protests that are going on that are actually around Black Lives Matter?
In essence, I think when we talk about measuring impact, we can measure impact by the number of people who still have the language and the culture intact, the language and the culture of civility. We've encouraged our team members who are in various cities to be a part of public forums. We've asked our members to go to police impact meetings in communities. We've asked our members to attend municipal city council meetings, to attend county board meetings, to go to block clubs, neighborhood block clubs. We have Civility Counts shirts that President Chuck Hughes had made. And when our people wear those shirts, they're a walking billboard. We've been a part of large gatherings, such as the Pierogi Fest that takes place in Whiting, Indiana every year, where thousands of people gather for a summertime taste event. We have been the greeters at the gates, and we have asked our vendors to support the initiative by wearing the shirts. The shirts do speak. They don't have a physical voice, but they do speak. So we're asking people to go to these meetings. In Chicago, where I live, we have what's called CAPS, Community Aided Police Programs. And I'm asking our members, and even those on the West Coast, we have team members, those who've adopted the community civility language and culture, to go to meeting places in the community. We've got people who are talking to groups that are prone to violence. We have members who are operating as peace initiators. And what we're saying is, when you go into a community, you're not going to take it over. You're going to find people in that community who already share the cultural belief that civility is the best way to go. Find those in that organization, locate those in that community who already share that common thread of belief. Partner with them. You're not going to take over their territory, and you're offering yourself as a resource to come partner with them to try to make change. When you can, approach government. When you can, when government is open. When you can find a sitting council member or a neighborhood precinct committee person, when you can find someone who's in charge of a community group, ask them to listen to what you have to say, and ask them, isn't this something you'd love to see in your community? So that's how we're engaging communities. We're asking our faith leaders to post Community Civility Counts signs in their ministries, in their churches, and to devote time, even on Sundays, to making mention that civility counts, whether it's World Civility Day or any day of the week. We're asking businesses to develop a culture of sensitivity and write it into the code of conduct within their organizations. Just like the Indiana State Senate and State House did, they wrote it in to their codes of conduct, encouraging their members, even in times of heated debate, remember to be civil. So when we started choosing people and publicly recognizing those people, and Dr. Rivers was a big part of that by helping us by awarding people each year when they come, they have a sense of empowerment with that. They feel purposeful with that. And when some of them have gone back to their communities, and their local communities have held press conferences and recognized them for what they did. If each one would reach one, it begins to grow. The thing is to develop people's confidence that they have a voice and that civility will work. I've enlisted the aid of prayer teams. When we went into the Senate and the House of Representatives, we didn't go empty-handed. We took intercessors, we took prayer teams, people behind the scenes praying in the Spirit, using the Word of God and believing God for phenomenal change. And the change did come. We got both of those organizations to unanimously decide that they would support what we were doing. And before that time, they hadn't agreed on anything for months. But I'm a spiritual man, and I believe that whatever we do, we need to precede it with prayer, and precede it with faith, and precede it with finding the people who believe like you. What Jesus did, he gathered 12. He didn't just go attack world systems on his own. He gathered a group of people that could support his ideology and support his culture of language and belief. So what we do when people ask, if it's within our power, we go to those communities. We take teams to those communities. We've trained people to speak as representatives of civility. We knight people, so to speak, saying you're officially a civility knight. Now you can go out and speak. It doesn't take a whole lot, and you don't have to pay dues to do this, but we just want you to keep the message simple and strong. Helping other nations, Dr. Rivers and his team are doing that. We've got operatives in other nations that are doing that. And the main thing is, we tell people up front, we don't have a funding mandate, or we don't have a supply system to fund you on this. We did it with absolutely no money in Gary, Indiana, in an impoverished city. So we use that as a platform to let people know you don't have to have a big bankroll to be civil. You don't have to have a big bankroll to impact the culture of thought in the places that you're going to. But your sincerity does speak. And when you speak with a voice that respects and honors others. And I believe that if we continue this, we will see impact.
Wonderful. You are already seeing impact, as you're here on the NGO Whisperer Show, we're all about impact. And as you rightly put it, you don't need funding to be civil. Civility is already ingrained in each and every one of us because we have been created in the image of God and after his likeness. And we lose our civility when we fall short of the likeness of God, because God, he is the author of civility and he gives it to us. So as we come to the end of the show today, would like you to invite people, let people know how can they be part of this movement that is changing the world, that is impacting lives and changing generations.
I'd be glad to do that. Here are a couple of web addresses where you all can connect with what we're doing. That would be nwi.com/civility counts. I'll say that again. nwi.com/civility counts, and that stands for Northwest Indiana. That's the media group that's been partners with us, the Northwest Indiana Times. Also, you can do Civility Counts on Facebook. Again, that's Civility Counts on Facebook. Then there's Civility on Twitter, which is hashtag Civility Counts on Twitter. And we've got Instagram at Civility Counts. And there are people who monitor those sites and who keep us informed of the fact that the team is growing, that people are interested. Each year, when people hear that World Civility Day is coming, we send out mailings, physical mailings, and also media mail to give people an understanding of the various events that are going to be surrounding World Civility Day. In the daytime, we do seminars, teaching and training, and that's where a lot of the young people, the high schools, the grammar schools come into our event center to do that. And in the evenings, we have 1 or 2 keynote speakers. We have a wide scale of entertainment. Last year, we had the renowned singer Melba Moore, who people know about. She was one of our guest artists. And we had one of the original dancers from Soul Train, which is very popular here in the United States. And we always have educational material available. We've had our hospitals come in and teach how healthcare relates to civility. We've had our law enforcement personnel come in, our public safety personnel. So those events are very chock full of information and good experiences. And we give awards. In conjunction with the Gary Chamber and I Change Nations, we award people for their efforts in civility, keeping them encouraged to keep the flame burning, keep the torch lit, and continue to be civil. So that's what I'd like to offer to our viewers today, is that it begins with you. Make that decision to be civil. You're going to be challenged. Somebody's not going to believe in civility. And you might meet more of those at first than you do people who are in support of it. But whatever you do, don't stop being civil, because community civility counts.
There you've heard it. Community civility counts. We want to thank you, Dr. Gordon E. Bradshaw, for joining us today and sharing with us this vision that you had. At one time, it was an idea, and now it is a movement that is changing nations, impacting generations, starting from Indiana in the United States, and now all over the world. We have different people groups, we have different communities, we have corporations, we have people in government, all under one slogan: community civility counts. We thank you for your courage and the amazing work that you have continued to do all these years from 2015 up to now. And we wish you the very best. We speak a blessing upon Community Civility Counts. May it spread into each and every community, each and every village, each and every city, and even each and every home around the world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so very much. And remember, together we win. Thank you.
Thank you.
On your program. I'm honored.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, it's all about connecting people, raising funds, and impacting lives globally.